Government Week in Review, a look at the major stories for the week. Coming up, financial literacy expert says Grenada needs to have more conversations on money management, and taxpayers soon to take advantage of tax amnesty. Details to these and more when we return.
I generally do believe that is good for the point of view that to stimulate the economy, money in people's hands, generally they would not find it so burdensome to wait till the end of the month. Think about commitments of people who have young children, for example. It would make sure that they can sustain the activity of that, be it daycare, be it buying supplies for the kids. That helps in that regard. What we have to do as a nation is make sure that we manage our affairs, and it goes for everything else. But generally, I think it's a good idea because it's not just Grenada. It happens all over the world, and some places actually, even before this pronouncement, a lot of business places would pay certain workers, not everybody, but certain workers and certain sectors of the private sector definitely would have bi-monthly payments already.
Welcome back. Grenada will advance further if more conversations are held on money and financial management. That's according to financial literacy expert Dr. Terence Martin during an exclusive interview with GIS on money management as part of government's commitment to educate the public service and other citizens following the fulfillment of bi-monthly payments in April. The promise of making bi-monthly payments to public officers was part of the Deacon Mitchell-led administration's campaign promise during the June 2022 general election. Dr. Martin explained that if the cycle of having money as a taboo is broken by parents from an early age, children can learn about financial management, and Grenada can move forward smoothly from monthly payments to bi-monthly.
We can't make arbitrary decisions to just leave it there, or I'm not going to deal with it. And we oftentimes shelve money conversations because talking about money is taboo, or we dare not ask. It's ingrained in us. It's literally systemic and systematic at the same time. And if we could break those initial cycles, I think this would have gone a lot smoother, or will go a lot smoother in general. So we can't just say, yeah, I'll just leave it there, because again, by the time you make that payment, you might then be out of that grace period. If you're going to tell somebody to save, you also have to tell them the cost of saving. And the cost of saving is inflation. And that's something I didn't learn until I was in college, right? And I knew inflation existed because I did economics at the Cape level and etc. But to really know how inflation impacts us, because I was shut out of the money conversation. If I ask for something, oh, I ain't got no money, that's it, that's the answer, right? It wasn't why I don't have any money, or this money is allocated, or this is the budget, and this is how the budget is allocated, etc. So when I realized, and I became an adult, started to make, my first instance was to save. But then you realize that you go to the supermarket today and you compare it to 1 year from now, or a year before, and you realize you're able to buy less things today. That's the impact of inflation.
He said one way money can be managed efficiently is through trade and investments. Dr. Martin encouraged the public officers to be wise in investments so as to avoid scams.
Being a national of Grenada, you don't even have to just stay in the region to invest. You could invest in the United States. You could actually open an investment account in the United States and trade in the United States, which gives you access to the open world. Today I asked the kids about TikTok. Do you like TikTok? Yes. And I told them, thank you, because every time you use that app, I make money, right? Because I invest in the company that owns TikTok, right? And the reason why I could do that is because I could trade in the US and have access to the Chinese market, Chinese economy, for example. So it's a multi-step process.
Dr. Martin will continue engagements over the weekend into next week with students, small businesses, and pensioners. Taxpayers will soon take advantage of a tax amnesty which provides a 100% waiver of late fees and penalties to individuals owing taxes up to December 2021. The move by government seeks to stop further accumulation of tax arrears from 2022 onwards and address the collection and accountability of outstanding taxes. Leader of Government Business in the Lower House, Honorable Philip Telesford, presented the Tax Administration Amendment Bill 2023 to the House for discussion on Wednesday. He said the bill seeks to improve tax payment compliance with more than over $700 million owed in outstanding taxes and a collection rate of 34%. The amnesty will end December 31st, 2023.
This seeks to improve on compliance. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the strategy of the government is to provide a waiver, provide an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, where businesses and individuals who are owing the government tax can pay those taxes without having to service fees and penalties associated with the arrears on those taxes. And so, Mr. Speaker, this bill proposes a tax amnesty. The idea, Mr. Speaker, is to halt the further accumulation of arrears and so the collection of all tax arrears from 2022 onward will be strictly enforced in accordance with Act number 14 of 2016, which is the Principal Act.
Minister Telesford called on financial institutions to encourage their clients to take advantage of the amnesty.
As a government, Mr. Speaker, we anticipate that the banks would also work with their clients to enable them to take advantage of this amnesty. We recognize that over $777 million worth of taxes, fees, and penalties are outstanding. We believe that these financial institutions must work with their clients, whether it has to do with loans or overdraft, to assist them in taking advantage of this amnesty, thereby enabling the government to collect these outstanding taxes. So we are prepared, Mr. Speaker, to give 100% waiver tax on the fees and on the penalties that were accrued over time.
Prime Minister Honorable Deacon Mitchell remains optimistic that the move to digitize the tax system and other government systems will eliminate the backlog of arrears and correct several errors within the current structure.
They need to modernize, simplify, and digitize our tax system so that it would make tax collection and the payment of taxes easier. And I indicated that the much talked about data protection bill was part and parcel of that process, because come 2024, the intent of the government is to move the tax collection system online with a new tax administration system. And so we need to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that when we migrate the data into that new tax system, that the data is credible, that the integrity of the data is important.
Honorable Joseph Andel and Honorable Lennox Andrews also give support to the bill.
The ordinary citizens of our country who have, over the years, taken a battering economically in many cases, the businesses, especially those that have struggled to recover since the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, And I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that even the government, because with the incentive now of not having to deal with arrears and penalties, it is more likely that revenues that would not have been collected will now be forthcoming to the Treasury.
What you forego today in interest and penalties and whatever, what is foregone today is being collected down the road in higher tax revenue.
Once members of the Upper House give support to the bill, it will give authority to the Minister for Finance to waive penalties and fees. The government's weekly public engagements continue to highlight critical recommendations for consideration in the minimum wage reformation process. During the latest engagement at the St. Andrew Methodist School earlier this week, recommendations made to the Wage Advisory Committee included a thorough revision of the basket of goods, more public education, and more support for small businesses to offset financial obligations.
Checking the food basket. Because even if we want to do or raise minimum wage, we also have to look at the affordability of the whole thing in terms of the government's affordability, the economy rather, let me not say the government. All right, how much? Because we have to factor in a lot of things, Food basket is important. Some of the things that I'm seeing in the food basket now, you know, I'm asking the question whether or not the food basket also wants a review, right? Because we have to factor those things into the calculation of a minimum wage, transportation costs, you know, a number of things. It's not just the food and what have you.
The basket of goods should be something realistic. Now, as we said, the last minimum wage review was in 2011. That has been, well, now 12 years. So this shows that in addition to so many things in our society, perhaps the way we deal with the minimum wage review needs to be part of the transformation. Now, again, the basket of goods. Now, for those who don't know, this is a hypothetical assemblage of goods that economists apply a tortuous mathematical formula to determine, as we said, the cost of living. And how the cost of living increases or decreases. Well, it doesn't usually decrease, how it increases over time. So perhaps instead of waiting for a minimum wage review, could it be legislated that the minimum wage increases every year along with the cost of living? I think this would be much more efficient than having to go through a process every 3 years of a minimum wage review.
If we are talking about increasing the minimum wage, we should also encourage Grenadians that are working below the minimum wage to increase their skill level or their education. And in that way, they would be more productive, they would be more efficient. So we cannot continue to speak increasing wages if persons are performing at the same level. We are at a place where we are speaking about transformation. We are in a more innovative technological era. We cannot continue to use the same policies or procedures that we used in the past, and there shouldn't be any separation.
Education. What education are we putting in place to improve the mindset of our young people, to improve their approach to work? We've spoke a lot about productivity, yes, and that would be more in the sense of maybe if you have a farm or certain other business. But in the service industry, attendance is important just as well. Persons coming to work. For example, I may have a farm, my workers may not show up, but God may bless me with rain. I don't have to go water the plants. But if I have a daycare and there is someone who doesn't show up for work, that child is left unattended for the day. So we really have to work on how we're improving our young people's mindset. What education as well we're putting out there. Yes, we want to increase wages, but employers as well want to see the value for their money and how it's helping their business to grow.
As part of the review of the existing basket of goods in the reformation process, the Ministry of Agriculture is also updating the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy. The update will include a clear definition of what Grenada's nutrition level should look like from infantry to the elderly. The ministry has partnered with the Wage Advisory Committee and the Ministry of Labour to educate the public during the consultations on minimum wage. Akiza Charles is the National Project Coordinator for the Adaptation Planning for Food Security in Grenada.
Grenada has had a food and nutrition policy that has expired in 2018, so it was from 2013 to 2018. And under the project, we are seeking to update the National Food and Nutrition Security Policy. And one of the things that the government is looking to incorporate into the updated policy is the effects of climate change. We're also looking at gender considerations. And when we're speaking of gender considerations, we're looking at, although you can see an increase in sectors like agriculture, specifically agro-processing, that is supported by women, we're looking at how do you now incorporate the issues that affect women who may not be in agro-processing but agriculture, and the issues that affect them versus men, or issues that affect men versus women in the agricultural sector that can affect food and nutrition or food and nutrition security.
The next public engagement will be held on Wednesday, 26th April at the St. Rose Modern Secondary School at 6 p.m. for residents of St. John and St. Mark. It will be broadcast live on the GIS channel and social media pages. This is the Government Week in Review. When we return, OECS Council of Ministers speak to the use of data to increase development.
Get ready to experience the ultimate Spice Mass launch 2023. On Friday, April 28th, the Stadium Car Park will be transformed into an electrifying arena of raw talent and energy. Starting at 5:30 p.m., you'll be blown away by the incredible lineup of artists set to grace the stage, including Boise, Terra the Governor, Lil Natty and Thunder, Lava Man, Looney Spark and Electrify, Jad King, Lil Kerry, Lil Jello, Dash, Crave, Mozo, Scala, and many more. But that's not all. Prepare to be amazed by the traditional mass, Moko Jumbies, Jab Jab, Short Knee, and Veko. Plus, your reigning Panorama champs, Co-op and Comancheros, will also be there to add to the excitement. And the best part, it's completely free. The Stadium Car Park is the place to be on Friday, April 28th. Get ready for an epic night that you'll never forget. Spice Mass, the evolution.
Welcome back. OECS Council of Ministers commit to increasing reliance on data to increase development in key areas. Director General of the Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, Dr. Didacus Jules, commended OECS Council Ministers for recognizing the critical contribution data make toward development. He was addressing delegates at the 8th OECS Council of Ministers of Human and Social Development meeting in Antigua earlier this week. The meeting gave the policymakers the opportunity to look into the effects of COVID-19, climate change, and other social ills on the people of the OECS to establish priorities for action collectively and individually. According to Dr. Jules, applying data-driven techniques to push development will encourage targeted interventions and better decision-making to efficiently respond to human and social development needs. He outlined a new platform that will be used by OECS member countries, especially the youth, to gather opinions and information on various issues. The data and insights are shared back with communities and connected to policymakers.
By employing data-driven methods in our decision-making, we can support better targeting, ensuring that no one is truly left behind. In this council meeting, ministers will be familiarized with U-Report, a free SMS social monitoring tool available on all mobiles, and a tool for gathering data to inform social interventions through engagement. Our thanks to our stalwart partners, UNICEF, in ensuring that the OECS as a region has access to this tool, now used in 68 countries by over 11 million users. And these statistics should tell you the power of that tool. The U-Report platform provides an opportunity for OECS youth in particular to speak up on issues of relevance to them while suggesting recommendations to the relevant authorities through popular social messaging applications like WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook.
The 8th ministerial meeting was held under the theme Touching Lives Through Data-Driven Development. Minister for Social Transformation in Antigua, Senator Samantha Marshall, said the future of the OECS looks bright with the involvement of youth in strategically charting the course toward development.
Our youth involvement and meaningful participation is critical at this juncture. Since our aim is to make a change now for the future, and whom better to have a voice now to determine their future outcomes but our youth themselves. As a result, the intervention led by the youth ambassadors is the most timely and relevant to overall purpose of social protection, gender equity, diversity, equal access and opportunities, security, participation, and empowerment for all.
Grenada's Minister for Social and Community Development, Senator Gloria Thomas, attended the meeting in Antigua. As the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives continues to roll out transformational projects that are expected to have positive impacts on production and improve the livelihoods of farmers, fishermen and agro-processors, stakeholders in Carriacou and Petit Martinique have been assured that they too will receive necessary support. We have more in this report. The affirmation from the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives as a technical team visited the Sister Isle last week to consult with stakeholders on both Sister Isles.
A seed bank, I would like to suggest a seed bank in the time of genetically modified seeds and we're losing our indigenous species. Can we start up a seed bank where we have okra seeds and corn seeds and pea seeds and whatever it is? Because in a few years from now we may not be able to find our local breeds because everybody's genetically modifying everything.
We have to find a way to get our young people, because I think when I grew up, farming was one of the key things that was taught not only in school but home as well. Because I could remember every primary school in Grenada had a garden where you have foliage or you have whatever going to, and that wash away. So we need to get the young people not to slave, but to understand the importance of agriculture.
We have to look at some enabling legislation, whether it is external, the Ministry of External Affairs, the Ministry of Fisheries, and so forth, with St. Vincent, so that we will have some enabling legislation, not just for the management of the resource, but for the better collaboration between fishers here in PM and Carriacou and those in St. Vincent. We actually had an interesting discussion with folks from St. Vincent and they are all for it.
I'd like to know what is the legislative reach for the NTF in terms of where the money is distributed, whether it can be put towards agricultural projects, because when you go on their website you see, okay, the approved projects, everything is all infrastructure. I'm not saying we don't need buildings, I'm not saying we don't need this, that and the third, but we cannot eat money, we cannot eat concrete, and with this push towards agriculture, is it possible, if it's not possible now, could it be made possible through legislation, discussions and so, to have some of the money that goes into the National Transformational Fund through the CBI program to be dedicated, allocated specifically towards agricultural projects, whether it's big ones, where you have multi-million-dollar projects that are in the pipeline, or small ones for just to help individual persons like myself or other persons who might want to do certain things.
Speaking there were several sector stakeholders who identified possible areas for increased and improved support from the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives. Leading the team to the Sister Isles was Minister with responsibility for Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives, Senator the Honorable Adrian Thomas. His technical team comprised of Aaron Francois, the Permanent Secretary, Leonard St. Bernard, Agro-Processing and Agribusiness Specialist, Justin Rennie, Technical Specialist with responsibility for Fisheries, Marine Resources and the Blue Economy, and Dr. Keymont Cummings, Chief Vet and Livestock Officer. While it is noteworthy to commend the efforts by farmers, fishers, and agro-processors in Carriacou and PT Martinique, there are several challenges to be addressed. Senator Thomas explained that with the transformational initiatives, it would not be business as usual, as there has been and continues to be an altered perspective on agriculture.
Agriculture is no longer, you cannot present it as cutlass and fork. While cutlass and fork is tradition and we must know how to use it, but we have to go a step higher. We have to go in areas in terms of modernizing agriculture. The modernized way of doing it, we have to, as a nation, we have to explode, because if we want to compete, we must be up and running.
With food security and agriculture high on the agenda, the Ministry of Agriculture and Land, Fisheries and Cooperatives is awaiting the green light from the World Bank to implement a one-year emergency action plan titled the Food Security Enhancement Project. This project would include significant opportunities and support for stakeholders on the sister isle. Permanent Secretary Aaron Francois spoke of the ways that Carriacou and PT Martinique will be benefiting from this project.
We want to pilot using solar technology, solar energy, and we want to see how we want to provide an opportunity for storage, because a lot of the times we produce food and sometimes with the glut, a lot spoil. So we want to have some storage systems. We have identified Carriacou as being one of the beneficiaries, and I understand that you already have a facility on Carriacou.
Hold on, I didn't hear the clap for that.
Yes. And so I understand that you already have a facility on island, and we are going to work. We will be working with the farmers cooperative to make sure that that facility is established, because we want, in other words, we want you to get quality products too.
Extensive support will also be provided for agro-processors through equipment and improving access to packaging materials, as well as facility upgrades for several agro-processors. Other components that Carriacou and PT Martinique is expected to benefit from include the provision of planting materials, improved access to water, plowing services, labor, and fertilizer, all in an effort to improve production and food security. The Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, Fisheries and Cooperatives is committed to working with stakeholders to provide an enabling environment that can increase local production and improve the livelihoods of farmers, fishers, and agro-processors. Reporting, I am Mina Booker. We take another break. When we return, we will talk about the launch of a volunteer conservation program.
At the NIS, we're constantly looking for ways to better serve the evolving needs of our population. We learn from experiences, grow, and improve. Learning from the COVID-19 pandemic, we realized a gap in our benefits that needed addressing. We are happy to announce the commencement of the Unemployment Benefit Program. This benefit provides a recently unemployed individual with 50% of their insurable income. The benefit can be claimed up to 15 days after the loss of employment and continues for a maximum of 13 weeks or 3 months after the first claim. Workers in the private sector, public sector, statutory bodies, work permit holders, and the self-employed are eligible for this benefit. While many are eligible, some conditions must be met to qualify. The person must have been an insured employee who paid at least 52 weeks of contributions at the time of loss of employment. They must also be under the pensionable age. The person must not be at fault for the loss of their employment. This means that someone who voluntarily left their job or was terminated due to theft, fraud, or dishonesty will be disqualified for this benefit. For us to verify loss of employment, the employer must provide the individual with a termination certificate. Additionally, the claimant must conduct bi-weekly check-ins with the NIS and must be actively seeking suitable employment while in the receipt of this benefit. For the full qualifying conditions of the unemployment benefit, we encourage you to visit our website www.nisgrenada.org or call us on 440-3309.
Welcome back. A new project is being implemented to maintain the marine and terrestrial environment and life throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. The Grenada Sustainable Trust Fund and other stakeholders officially launched the Ecosystems Volunteer Program on Tuesday in the presence of representatives of the Sustainable Development Fund, Caribbean Biodiversity Fund, and other stakeholders from the public, private sector, and civil society. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Climate Resilience, Marina Jessamy, and a member of the Board of Directors of the Sustainable Trust Fund, spoke of the program's importance for Grenada.
The key word is sustainable, means the vision is beyond today, and our role is to ensure that we have financing to support biodiversity and conservation of our environment, not only for today, but for present and especially future generations. Both as a member of the Board of Directors, as well as the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry for Climate Resilience, the Environment and Renewable Energy, I'm very much committed to this process because some years ago, I had the privilege to serve as PS Environment before when the conversation started about the Caribbean Challenge Initiative. And I want to leave this thought with you, that it takes vision to take action. If we didn't take the action then, we would not have the moment we have today.
The Caribbean Biodiversity Fund is a partner with the Sustainable Development Fund. Tanya Liu says that more people should support the cause of the trust fund.
When we signed the first partnership, what we call a partnership agreement, is an agreement with an entity in each of the countries that we work in. So currently we work in 11 countries, and what happens is in each country we sign one agreement. In the case of Grenada, our agreement is with GSDTF, the Grenada Sustainable Development Trust Fund. Why we're here today is that besides the financial resources and managing that whole land mass and the ocean resources that we have, is we need more people, right? People who share our core values, collaboration, creativity, innovation, inclusivity, and much more, to be able to, as a region and as Grenada, to sustainably manage those resources.
Another keynote speaker, Mr. Van Boon Harry, Chief Executive Officer of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Conservation Fund, shared some of the achievements and challenges that were faced in St. Vincent.
Some of the things that we've done in order to keep the interests of our volunteers is to let them claim ownership of the program. Let them be an integral part of the activities, coming up with the ideas. You know, let them take ownership of it. Capacity building for your volunteers. You organize capacity building sessions for your volunteers from time to time. And above all, you let your volunteers have fun. Without your volunteers, you have no volunteer program. So above everything else, you let your volunteers enjoy themselves while they're doing their work and outside of that.
Finally, the government of Grenada is encouraging the concept of sports for all, which will be reflected in the national policy on sports and physical activity. With physical activity being part of the package, focus is being placed on its link to health and wellness.
You cannot divorce physical activities from nutrition, because nutrition And physical activities goes hand in hand, especially when you're talking about the diseases, the communicated diseases that are so prominent in the society.
Right.
You know, when you go to the doctor will tell you, okay, you need to look at your lifestyle, which is physical activities, and you need to focus on your nutrition.
Right.
So the policy would encompass all these aspects. And finally, it will focus heavily on grassroots, meaning community and school.
Advisor on Sports, Patrick Simmons. Mr. Simmons, who was a guest on the GBN program Beyond the Headlines, added that in government's desire to implement the national policy on sports and physical activity, it will not be wise to identify any particular sporting discipline over another. Government's approach will be to give all sporting disciplines the opportunity to be developed in Grenada.
The ministry view and vision will be to work with those that we already have. But at the same time, we cannot keep the door closed. We must have it open, because not so long ago you saw that there were rugby. Mm-hmm. Now, another sport that is emerging very, very nicely is beach volleyball. Mm-hmm. So, you know, these things, they must be taken on board, because you have now a number of athletes that are showing great interest in the sports, and you don't really want to leave them behind.
That story just ended the Government Week in Review. Until next time, I am Rakisha St. Louis.